Sonictalk.
Hello everybody, welcome to Sonic Talk episode 728, recording today on Wednesday the 14th of September 2022. This is the Music Technology Podcast where we talk about things to do with music technology amongst other things. We've also got a new feature which seems to be proving very popular. If you've got any questions for the panelists, you just type QQ and then your question in the live comments, mostly on YouTube, but it will take it on Twitch and Twitter if you at sonicstate as well. So do send them in and we'll build them up if we don't get through to them actually for this show, but we will get around to them eventually. We've got a big pile of them coming up now. There's a whole lot, but we've also got guests. But I want to say thank you very much to our friends over at iZotope and also Baby Audio, both supporting the show. iZotope, if you use the code Sonic10 at checkout, you can save yourself 10% on pretty much anything there apart from subscriptions and hardware. And Baby Audio, I believe it's, I'll have to remember now. I should have had this written down. It's an impromptu, ST15. If you use the code ST15, you'll save 15% at checkout there. So lots of savings, and we thank them for their continued support. Much appreciated. Want to say also, if you're interested in joining us on Patreon, I want to plug this because we're putting a lot of energy into Patreon. So I'll play this now. I pre-recorded it this week. I've even got it together. Why not consider supporting us on Patreon? Very affordable. In fact, we posted a whole bunch of stuff recently. We've also got the JHVE MFM 2.5 additional footage, which is the more feedback machine from JHVE. There's some extra exclusive stuff there, as well as exclusive Knobcon floor show walk with our man Jim Hayward from Ear Monkey Music. He posted something. There's more videos actually coming onto the regular YouTube output from him very soon. We've also got Sonic Talk, exclusive ad-frees and pre-show posted there, as well as lots of downloads. There's patches, there's sample instruments in decent sampler format, which is a cross-platform free format. And also, if you fancy joining us by the end of the show and you join at the upper layer, which is the Sonic State Star, your name will appear in the end credits. So if you're quick, you'll get there. By the way, we've just introduced a 12-month subscription, so you can join, pay a year in advance, and I think it's 12 or 15% off. So once again, if you already do support us, thanks very much. If you haven't already, then please consider it. Yes, I'm trying to get it together. I've got to get into the habit of doing this. It's kind of a bit alien to me. But anyway, lovely to have our guests. I'll start with Mr. Rich Hilton. We haven't had Rich for such a long time. Rich, of course, being on the road with Chic. Last time I saw you, Rich, I think was actually in person, wasn't it? It was in Bristol. We went and had a meal. I don't know if you came. You haven't been on since then, right?
I don't think I have been on since then. But we had a great time, and that was nice seeing you and Andy and Gaz, and it makes the tour more special when I get to share it with my friends.
Yeah, so you were on the road for like a really long time. So how long have you been back? Are you back kind of? Is that it for a while, or do you get into the autumnal kind of more local stuff? Because you've been in the US with Duran Duran support as well, haven't you?
Right. So we did 3 months in various parts of Europe and the UK. And then we came home and we had maybe 5 or 6 days off. And then we picked back up with Duran Duran in North America and did some shows with them. And in the middle of that, we ran back to Europe briefly and did a couple of shows in Monaco. And then we ran back and did some more shows with Duran Duran in North America. And now that part has rested and I've been home for a few days. And tomorrow I'll go to Detroit where we'll do an auto show.
Wow. Okay.
And then next week, at the end of the week, we'll do a festival in Arkansas, which is a new one for me. Festivals in Arkansas. So that should be interesting. And it's going to be, I think for the rest of the year, it's going to be down and back one-offs, where I go play a gig and come home kind of thing. So I think the extended part of the thing is going to subside for a while, and it'll just be one-offs going to gigs and coming home.
Nice. Well, it's lovely to have you, Rich. It's been fun. You've missed a couple of things. A new panelist in the shape of Paulie, Alex Bow. actually, before we go any further, I want to say massive congratulations to Paulie and his partner Rebecca for the birth of their baby, Fen. All well and good. I know he was kind of waiting, and it was like, am I going to be able to do the show, my baby? But all mother and baby and everybody's well, and it looks like I think I suggest a period of adjustment, perhaps not coming on the show for a little while. He's going to be doing all of that new father stuff, and so it's really lovely, really lovely news. Congratulations to you all. Anyway, and we also have Mr. Matt Hodson. Matt Hodson is there in his, well, I guess this might be, one of the last times we see you in this place, because you're going to be moving soon, right?
Yeah, I am, yeah. And I can't wait, really. Next stage for me is, building my own studio, probably in my back garden, I think. So I might even let people know how I'll put all that together and the process of that. If anyone's interested, I'll probably do it on my YouTube or something like that. I haven't been out touring with Duran Duran myself, but I am expecting the phone call. So Simon, when you need me, man, let me know, Mr. LeBon.
Hungry like the wolf. Well, yes. Also Matt, of course, has been doing some. We've got the Erica said Percons HD, which he's been looking at. If you're a follower on Patreon, you'll have had the opportunity to ask a few questions. That's going to be coming up. I think I'm going to be publishing that tomorrow, actually.
Great.
So that's and there's some more stuff coming up from you. And I know you've been wrestling, and I know it's difficult when you start doing the whole new video workflow. It's a bloody nightmare, and I do feel for you. I help you as much as I can, and I think perhaps a one-to-one session might help you just kind of iron out some of the kinks. But it's a learning process.
It really is. It really is. Anyone thinking of getting into doing the kind of any sort of reviews or anything like that, and getting their audio video sorted out. I mean, if you've got to take Nick's example, what they do on Sonicstate, it's so well lit, it's so well done, it's so well edited. It's unbelievable how much goes into all of this. So I'm trying to get up to Nick's level, everybody. I'm trying my best, and I apologize.
No doubt.
The perk ones is, it took me 3 times to film. I hope it's useful. If it's not, tell me and I'll just do it again, everyone. But if you're on Patreon, I think you've already got that one up there. Duran Duran must go modular with Matt. Yes, Duran Duran and Matt's collaboration should happen. The perk ones, by the way, I won't give too much away, but I've loved playing with it. I did a live jam with it last night. I've fallen in love with this drum machine. I think honestly, it's going to be one of those. It's going to be one of those people going to be talking around for a while. Tonight, I'm doing another live stream. If I can just quickly plug this, Nick.
Yeah, of course.
I gave myself a task. I've received this, which is the Make Noise XPO, which is a stereo oscillator, and it's got 11 outputs simultaneously. So I've given myself the task of making a track tonight using nothing but this as the oscillator and all of the outputs simultaneously. So it could go absolutely chaotic, but I've had this for about a week, and I've really got into it. It's really interesting, the wavefolding that you can do on it, and just all that available output. It's a really, really interesting modular. I'm hoping what it'll do is actually replace me having multiple oscillators, which you've got to tune every time, get them all.
Well, I was going to say, it'll definitely be in tune, won't it? That's for sure.
How can it not be? Yeah, it's one oscillator, but all those individual outputs, if you use them in a particular way through VCAs and filters and that kind of thing, you can make it sound like you've got 11 different oscillators going. So I'm probably be doing that about 6:30, 7 o'clock tonight, UK time. If you want to join me and ask any questions about the XPO, because it's only really just come out, do give me a shout.
Excellent. Well, nice one. Thank you very much for letting us know about that. It's great. So we'll crack on with some topics. There are some. I'm just trying to find what's coming up first. Let's have a look. Let's go. Well, this came out a little while ago. It was one of those ones that came out slightly later than that week's show, so we are a bit late on this, but it's still extremely relevant. So this is Yamaha MODX Plus, which is, it's a really actually cool piece of kit. I did some synth jams with it and had a look at it. It's a great sounding instrument. What they've done is basically made it more. So you get 250, I think it's, if I'm right with this, I think it's 256 AWM2 voices plus 256 FMX voices. Plus, I think they've upped the RAM in it because it's got a load of flash RAM with all the sort of PCM samples. It's like more, I think it's doubled, so it's really getting close to the whole montage world, but a fraction of the price. And I think a lot of people tend to shy away from these. You know, you're either a Yamaha workstation person or you're not. And I think it's an interesting. Well, I think it's kind of an interesting move because, like I say, I did a whole bunch of stuff with it, which was. I think I did a couple of Friday fun jams, and you can create, there's little pattern-based things, and there's lovely pianos in it, and you can MIDI stuff in and bring external inputs. It's a lot of features. I mean, it does suffer, I think, a little bit from that slightly obscure Yamaha kind of industrial design software thing where you look at it and you've really got, I mean, I suppose it's no worse than Electron or whatever, where you've really got to kind of go, okay, I need to figure out how this goes. I know, Rich, you tend to favor the Roland stuff for your live performances and, the RD pianos, which is what you generally kind of get because it's in the higher stock and it makes sense. Have you tried any of these sort of flagship Yamaha things? And because to my mind, they do sound really good.
Yes, I have. I spent a bunch of time investigating the and the mind goes blank. The what is that? The top end keyboard, the Montage, and discovered that A, it would suit my needs, and B, it wasn't nearly as confusing, off-putting, obtuse, and weird in terms of the software operation as previous Yamaha instruments I had owned, which had sort of left me moderately flummoxed. And they've always been stronger for me in sample sets and hardware than they were in software just because of my preferences and the way it used to work. But now it all seems to work. It's coming together. They've looked at a lot of other people's touchscreen technologies, as one does, and come up with ways to operate it, mostly Korg, I would think, but also maybe Roland, and come up with much more direct and simple ways to operate the thing and bring things together in a way that makes it playable on stage. It's interesting to see, as relates to these products, the MODX and MODX Plus, what I'm calling midline workstations, is how the workstation simply refuses to die. I mean, It's just gone on for decades and decades. And now you can see that the focus has gone out of the sequencing aspects and much more into the performance control aspects. And they're including many more synthesizer engine options to try to make it feel more like a synthesizer, even where it doesn't particularly operate like a synthesizer, and gives a much broader range of usable, particularly synthesis sounds, because the sample side of this thing, the Rompler side, has been covered for a long history and is just continuing to get better. So that's all good. But the way they all incorporate synthesis engines now from their software offerings and things like that has made them much, much more versatile at a much lower price point. So you've got this midline now, which is Korg has something called Krone, I think, and these guys have MODX, and Roland has the Phantom O series, which is not the big Phantom, but the Junior Phantoms. And they all do
Junior
a
Phantom.
lot.
I like that. Yeah.
They all do a lot of what the flagship products do for maybe a little more than half of the cost of the flagship product. And I think that's a great market niche. They're not quite as roadworthy, perhaps. They may not have aftertouch. They may have
a lot lighter, though.
Yeah. Pardon?
A lot lighter.
Yes, they're lighter because they're, generally speaking, not made of metal in terms of the frames. But excellent products, and this thing looks great to me, the MODX Plus. It just looks like a ton of instrument for the money. And I haven't played it, but I expect it would be wonderful. And the people I know who I've recommended MODX to, who have purchased them, can't stop raving about them.
I should just clarify, I did get that wrong. It's 128 voices of AWM2 and 128 voices of FMX. So, I mean, only 256 voices. I mean, obviously, I'd imagine with most synths like that, you get that kind of scenario where you have more than one partial, or more, then it starts to divide down and you get less. Sure. And also, it should be mentioned that the Yamaha piano, the grand piano in there, most places, they can't say what it is, whereas the Yamaha can sample the Yamaha grand, and they can say hey, it's a Yamaha Grand in our grand piano, which is kind of cool. Should also point. I know we've got Nick Howes in the chat room, and he used to work for Yamaha a long time, and he's very much of the kind of sorry, same kit, different year, ADM2 and FM. We did that 30 years ago, 20 years ago, etc. And that's certainly a viewpoint, and it's one that's, from a unique point of view, someone who actually used to work for Yamaha. I don't know, Matt, do you think that I don't know whether you get workstations in at BIM where you're an educator and course director there. I mean, do you have that sort of stuff on hand, or is it more, more in the box?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm sure, as Rich can contest, those skills are still required for onboard musicians who are playing keys, is to have that crossover between a keys player and also integration with backing tracks, tempo sync stuff, triggering samples, the ability to quickly jump from one voice to another. Not only polyphony, but what's it called, where you could play multiple voices at once. Mine's gone blank as well. We're having a mind blank day, aren't we, today, Rich?
Multi-timbrality?
Multi-timbre, thank you. 10 points to Rich. We definitely see that this is definitely a requirement out there. It hasn't gone away. Yes, you could, when you're playing on stage, you could have a laptop running software and things, but again, I'm sure Rich knows much more about this. I've had my experiences with laptop on stage. I personally would prefer to have something dedicated like this, running all of that kind of thing, rather than having a separate laptop running some software, because they have a tendency to fall over. And this one's pushing it now with things like the multi-channel USB audio interface. 4 in 10 out on it, which integrates straight away with your DAW. That really stands out to me. For the money, if this is your world, if this is what you connect to as a music producer or as a live musician, then the fact that you get that now is amazing, because gone are the days where you need to have a separate sound card, all those cables coming out the back of your keyboard into your sound card, that going to your it's just doing it all in one. And let's not forget, everybody, it's got a super knob, which
let's not forget. I think you're right. I think that's
28 parameters simultaneously. Actually, one thing that jumps out to me on this, Nick, which I was kind of excited about. I saw it in the video briefly. I was like, what's that? And it's this motion sequence stuff that's going on in there, where it looks like you can sequence kind of strange envelope shape or combine basic envelope shapes to make quite unusual ones, and you can loop them at different points. And for me, that's always been an exciting thing about making music for me. I'm very much a one note and do interesting things with envelopes with the sound. That's my kind of thing.
Smart morph as well.
Smart morph, yeah. Rich, do you tend to use things like motion sequences and stuff like that when you're playing live, or is yours very much kind of find a sound and set it, if you don't mind me asking?
Generally speaking, I'm playing programs that I designed before the show. And I'm not even sure what you mean by motion sequencing, which means I'm probably not doing it.
So this is an interesting point, though. So you were actually in a studio, you might have been writing, recording, you're taking out, and you've got the ability to store those patches from the studio and then land them on stage straight away, which I think's really cool, because you're hearing what basically could have gone down on record.
Would be if I were using any of the gear that I use on stage in the studio, but So far that hasn't happened.
Oh, interesting.
So, and generally speaking, I'm translating patches from recordings that I didn't do. So, because very little of what we play in the Chic Show is stuff that I recorded originally. So I'm just making the best out of what I've got that plays well and represents the parts fairly. It's pure. It's almost purely imitative, although some of the kinds of synthesis I have to wrangle out of these romplers is not imitative, just simply because they won't do what the thing did. And I have to find something else interesting for it to do, that it works musically in the context.
Yeah. Is there a particular is there a particular synth that is hard to emulate from all of these that comes to mind, or
it's not so much a
all about that
particular
sound?
synth, but with Romplers, you have this bank of synth patches that somebody decided are representative of what synthesizers do, and you have to draw from those and combine them in interesting ways to try to make it seem like more than what it is, essentially.
Yeah.
And in some cases, I've been able to do that, and in some cases, I now would like to revisit some of those synth patches I'm using on stage because I find them pretty unsatisfactory. They're about the best that this thing is going to do, but they're not what I would do if I had an actual synthesizer under my hands. And I'd like to get closer to that. Now, if I do end up upgrading my rig to include the Phantom 8, which is something I'm looking at doing, it supports a bunch of synth engines and also allows access to Roland Cloud sounds. So that will broaden my available palette of synthesizers tremendously.
Wicked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah, the Roland Cloud stuff. The Roland Cloud stuff, then you've got access to all of those kind of 60s, 70s emulations, haven't you? And it's just there. And I guess that's what was on the records.
The Zencore, the Zencore engine. It makes sense for you and lots of talk because that's the idea. They're trying to create a complete. It's really interesting how Yamaha. I mean, I know we've had a sort of disparaging word from Nick, but I mean he worked there, and you know we've seen both with Roland and Korg. I'm not so much Korg, but certainly Roland and Yamaha. You know they do tend to get accused of sort of developing one technology and then churning it out and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I suppose that Roland are a bit further down the line because their Zencore is perhaps newer than the FMX and the AWM2, which has been around for a long time. But I think it almost gets to a situation where you know it's like a binary argument, isn't it? It's like you're either with one or you're with another. You're a Roland you're a cat or a dog person, or you're a Roland or a Yamaha person. For that,
but I'm not that
complexity.
way. I'm not that way just in general because I think these are all really good usable instruments above the general needs of a particular situation, and therefore it's up to us to make it musical, as with pretty much everything, including what's on Matt's wall behind him. And you know, it's just up to us to make it musical. In and of itself, it's just a thing, you know. So they're all good things. You know, the Yamaha stuff is good. The Roland stuff is good. The Korg stuff is good. You know, the Nord stuff is wonderful too. You know, there's plenty of good stuff out there, and it's up to us to bring the music and the love and the energy.
Yeah, that's true. Just a quick facts and figures. MODX plus 6, plus 7 and plus 8, priced at $1,680, $1,959 and $2,239. So, I mean, there's still a chunk of change, but compared to what you pay for Montage, it's certainly a big saving. That's UK pricing anyway. But do check. I mean, I must admit, I did enjoy having one around. It's nice to be able to pick something up. But what I found is as soon as I plug an analog synth into it, like I did with the Jams, it actually complemented it pretty well, but you could hear the difference between the real analog thing coming in and the emulations. But they do sound pretty good. I mean, I think it just depends on what you need it for. You know, that's the thing. It's one of those things. But yeah, great. We should probably jump in with a quick word from our friends over at Baby Audio. Baby Audio, of course, makes creative effects plugins designed to add color and depth to your mixes. They won Plugin of the Year 2021 in Future Music and Computer Music magazine, nominated for SOS Awards 2 years in a row. Why not try out the iHeart New York 2 IHNY2 punch parallel compressor VST AU AAX, engineered for modern aggressive compression sound. 44% off intro sale. I'm not sure if that's still running, but you can still save 15% off when checking out with the code ST15, even if the sale's not running. So do check out. We do thank them very much for their sponsorship of the show. Much appreciated. Okay. Right, let's see what we got next. We've got so many questions coming in as well. It's kind of pretty impressive actually. So I don't know where to go. There's so many topics. Let's see. Let's keep it. Oh, wait a second. That's the one I'm looking for. Yeah, well, we've got to cover this because basically it's always big news. So let's have Native Instruments Komplete 14 is now available. This is the sort of annual release. It's slightly different to previous years because Native Instruments
right away. If I'm searching
perhaps
for sounds,
haven't been quite so innovative in like new instruments. This seems to be a big update in terms of sound packs. This is what the video seems to be going. This is various people in various genres going, wow, these sounds great. And that's what they're pushing hard here. There's been quite a lot of changes, obviously, behind the scenes with the umbrella company, with them and iZotope, and you know, there's a lot of structural stuff going on. So I think, Kontact's being updated. So it's a big one, you know. It's always a big one, and everybody always moans because you buy it and then you get your upgrade as an upgrade fee. I didn't actually figure out what that was. I should have checked it out. Have I got the pricing for that anywhere? It doesn't look like I have. I'm terribly sorry. That's very amiss of me. I'm guessing, Matt, you know, at BIMS, you know, you probably get all of this stuff. You've probably got an educational license for all of these kind of things, because these are the things that really run. Sad news that we've lost reactor though. Reactors, absinthe rather, there's a lot gone, which is a real
sorry
shame.
Can I answer that in a second? I just can hear an alarm going off. I'll be right back.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I would. Rich, I mean, the thing about the Contact stuff, Native Instrument stuff, as we know, it's record ready. It's, you know, the drum sounds, everything, they do sound really fine. There's no denying it. Oh, you're muted as well. We'll all go. Way, take a drink, somebody.
Take a drink, yeah. Sorry about that. I used to be a regular upgrader up through, I think, version 12 or 13. I have Komplete, and I stopped upgrading because I didn't need it as badly, and I just couldn't see continuing to. The paths weren't so attractive as to make me jump for it. This is an interesting turn they've taken. And it makes me think, and it makes me pretty convinced that they're looking at what other people are doing. So I've listened to a bunch of their newer instrument packs on their website, in addition to the fact that they're giving away iZotope software and Brainworks software with the thing. They've got all these new packs, and they all seem focused on what I'll respectfully refer to as the Spitfire market of film scoring. There's just gobs and gobs of textural, giant sounding, what I call sales floor patch focus.
Right. On patch one.
Giant things happening that you could probably never find a context for, but when you're selling instruments, sells them straight off the floor because it just sounds magnificent on its own. And they've got a lot of that going on now. And I think it kind of derives from what Spitfire have been doing, which is servicing a very particular textural sort of film creation audio market where you're creating keyboard patches that do very unusual things, mostly with natural sources and custom sample sets and things like that. And I see Native Instruments shifting their focus away from synthesizer creation like Absinthe, which they've dropped, and more focused on Spitfire-like textural gigantism and variety. And what it creates for me is the question is, how many people are actually doing that? I mean, maybe I'm just that far out of touch with the industry, but I just think it's probably not more than two handfuls of people doing this. But yet everybody seems to be marketing this very wonderful sounding, highly textural, complicated, acoustically sourced, great stuff towards a market that I'm just not sure there's that many people in. God bless them, because I think it all sounds great and it's fun, and I really have tremendous respect for what Spitfire has done, and it seems like these guys are chasing that market with this release to some extent.
It makes a lot of sense, because essentially, you know, companies like Spitfire and UVI, they were sort of forced into creating their own sample playback engines because Contact licensing. It was just like, well, it's like renting your house or buying your house. It's like, well, why I just make my house and then I can decorate it with the sounds I want, you know? So they kind of created an environment where people went off and developed their own engines, and then so it all became about the content, and then sort of maybe Native Instruments were a bit left behind. I know, Matt, I mean, obviously Reactor has been a cornerstone in the development of many instruments, and I think maybe that's why Absinthe Absinthe has been dropped, because that wasn't a reactor-based instrument, and it would mean perhaps a parallel kind of development. If they want to continue to support it, they can't use this, workflow and this development thing that they've invested so much time in. So it just doesn't make sense. But anyway,
it's an interesting one.
Yeah,
it's an interesting one, the absinthe thing, mate. And it might be that. It might be about how that one and reactor sits alongside each other. I'm not exactly sure why absinthe's gone. I think the gentleman who's been coding it, and it's his baby, he's talked about it a little bit on the internet, but not in great detail about why it's no longer there. All I've seen on the internet is people actually quite upset about it and going, oh, what? Absinthe is really cool, and it's something that they're going to miss. It's certainly been a massively underrated synth engine for many years, and so many delightful things I've got out of it over time when I go to it, and I'm like, oh, absinthe, yeah, this crazy thing. What can I get out of this? And bam, something happens. But reactor certainly has always been there. And of course, they developed that into reactor blocks not so long ago, which allows you to do that kind of patching, which is really good. It sort of made that really user friendly, because before reactor blocks was about and you was building your own stuff in reactor, you had to really understand a little bit of low level kind of maths in a way, and how synthesizers work on a lower level than just purely than this, just sort of I call this really the building blocks, if you like. You can go much deeper than that. But I am wondering about where they're going, Native Instruments, with this. And I'm certainly now out of favor of downloading gigs and gigs and gigs and gigs and gigs. And to install it, to get updates, you have to install it. And I just don't have that room. It doesn't appeal to me anymore. There's some wonderful sounding things within there. And I'm sure if you bought the whole package, you're covered in terms of, compression, EQ, synthesizers, drum machines, you name it, you've got it. It's all there. But it is very, I don't know, it seems to, Native Instruments Komplete for many years was an exciting thing for me. When it came out, there was always exciting updates, and I was like, oh, what have they done now? And Polyplex came out and all sorts of interesting things, and I was really drawn to it. But now, kind of like what Rich is going along, I'm not sure really where they're heading, where the focus is, or how many people are doing what they need from this. Is it a case of splitting it up and making more sort of smaller packs? I don't know. I really like Artori's approach. Artori have effects, they have dynamics that you can get. They've got obviously the synthesizer range, but I like the way that they've got just enough and really well thought out pieces of kit that makes you want to download them and buy them. That's what I'm finding anyway with Arturia. Komplete just feels quite bloated, and I'm not sure why I would buy it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's an
that's not to say it doesn't sound great. It's brilliant.
It does. It's interesting. When you load, I've worked with a few sample pack people and downloaded stuff, and I always remember whenever I went back to battery and loaded the sample sets in there, it's just like, wow, these just sound infinitely better than just these kind of straight drum machine samples I'm loading into Simpler or whatever. It's just something about that. I suspect that there has been, and maybe they're a team of people, almost like they've got their own Bob Clearmountain or Bob Katz person who just everything goes through. It's mastered, and if it doesn't pass their filter effectively, it doesn't make the grade, and they turn it into this kind of thing that has a sound. And I guess the problem is with Native Instruments, there's nothing wrong with it. It's like you say, it's just overwhelming. There's just so much of it.
So two things I wanted to say about that. One, Battery has a fantastic audio engine, always has.
Agreed.
And the stuff that comes out of the output of Battery just sounds spectacular. And all of their stuff doesn't sound like that. I'm not even sure Contact sounds like that, but Battery has a great sounding audio.
Okay.
And as regards Absinthe, for a long time, Absinthe is not backwards compatible. My sessions from the mid-noughties don't open because they've got Absinthe 4 in it, and Absinthe 5 won't load those patches. So their software is already 10, 15 years into not being backward compatible anyway. And you can't load or install a version of Absinthe 4 in anything you're running today. So that
Right.
is a part of it
Makes
I
sense.
won't miss. But I did
Right.
like using it, and that's why they're in those darn sessions that I can no longer open because Absinthe 5 wouldn't open Absinthe 4 sounds as a backwards compatible mode. So that was really frustrating about it. I did watch the video with the guy who wrote Absinthe, talking about his experience of seeing it going away, and he's very disappointed, and that's understandable. And he has a new company, and he's touting what he's doing that are similar to Absinthe in his new company, but I'm also sure it's not going to open my Absinthe 4 sessions from the mid-noughties. And whatever, synths come and go. They had Pro 53 in the beginning. They've had, it's a remarkable thing that FM8 still runs, quite frankly. And
good point.
These things come and go, and it's just how it is. And we like to think that our sessions are indestructible, but the fact is they're not. And if you don't print everything as audio, you may never hear it again. So it's just life in the digital lane. That's just what it is. It's
life.
I'm not
That's
happy
the
about
show
it.
title right there. I've got it. Life in the digital lane. Right. Okay. I'm writing that down. Life in the digital lane. Yeah, that's a good one.
Got to render down your session, folks.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Time consuming and sucks. Well, actually, it's better than it used to be because you can render them pretty quickly. But most of them will just freeze. The track
I've got that.
done.
Nice one.
But
yeah, I mean, big news and also big changes. I mean, they obviously all these kind of boardroom maneuvering and all the corporate takeovers and whatnot are happening for a reason, because people can see further into the distance than maybe we can, and they know what's coming or what will work and what won't. But yeah, interesting time. Anyway, it's available now. You can go and fill your boots. I don't know what the prices are, but there's usually quite a complicated pricing structure depending on where you're coming from and what level. But yeah, you can go and get all of that stuff. Just buy yourself another hard drive and you'll be able to fit it all on there, I guess. So that's the plan. Right, I think it's time that we had a word from our friends over at iZotope, because it's that time of day.
iZotope Producers Club is a one-of-a-kind membership for producers ready to take their tracks to the next level. Once you join, you'll gain access to powerhouse iZotope plugins and a curated selection of tools from our partners, such as Melodyne from Celemony. Plus, as long as you're a member, you'll get every future update to the iZotope plugins in your membership for no extra cost. We'll also regularly serve you new curated content like exclusive inspiration-sparking sample packs and preset packs, and industry-leading training ranging from our own tutorials to vocal production lessons from the world-renowned Berklee Online, taught by Grammy-winning producer and engineer Prince Charles Alexander. With new content being added every month full of valuable production techniques, tips and tricks, and solutions to common production problems, becoming a member is an investment in your career that grows as you and your career do. For more information on iZotope Producers Club, head to iZotope.com.
And don't forget, if you head over to iZotope.com/Sonictalk, there's a special landing page where you can use the code SONIC10 to claim 10% off your iZotope plugin purchase, or you could try Music Production Suite Pro for 30 days. So we thank them very much for their continued support.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did this giant conglomerate that is now iZotope, Native Instruments, and Brainworks also acquire Celemony?
Oh, I don't know. Is that something that's just happened? That would be a big...
Well, they're offering it as part of a package with iZotope. And what I'm seeing in each of those companies' advertisements is packaging together with some of the other companies' offerings. So, for example, the Native Instruments pack offers you a version of Ozone 10 and also offers you a bunch of great Plugin Alliance Pro stuff. So these guys are in their ad talking about Celemony's Melodyne. Is that also? I mean, I actually know the guys at Celemony, and I could ask them, but I wondered if any of us knew, because it looks to me like they're also part of this gigantism industry.
I'm looking at their Wikipedia page, and I'm not seeing anything that indicates that. But quite often they'll form strategic alliances for bundles, because there's a Celemony API which kind of works in a lot of different DAWs, so they might have a different strategy. But yeah, that's an interesting question. Don't know about that. Good.
Yeah, I wonder.
Good thought. Yeah, I don't know. That's wow. Okay,
And,
right.
You've probably covered the fact that Pro Tools, after 20 years after everybody else, is finally supporting ARA2.
Woohoo!
10 years after everybody else. Whatever.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Woohoo! Let's have a party.
Yeah. Well, it feels to me like we should probably get into questions because there are so many questions. Let's get a couple and see where we're going. And this is an interesting one from Nicholas Bryant. And this one is: if you're all moving house, would a studio music space play a big role in your choice? Which is
take it away, Matt.
Take it away. Well, Matt, this is built for you, right?
100%, definitely. In this day and age, if you can and you've got the money up front to build a space in your back garden rather than renting, after 10, 15 years renting, you basically paid off what it would be to build somewhere. If you can't do that, and I haven't been able to do that for many years, I still don't know if I can. I'm moving into a house that has got a spare room, which can accommodate. In fact, it's an old garage which I can convert, which is much, much cheaper. And if you can't convert a garage, then obviously you can convert a room. And so I looked at the layouts of the houses. So if it was going to be, I was going to be producing in a room in the house, it's got to have like a bathroom between the next room, so I could make enough noise, and maybe get a bungalow so there's no one above you or something like that. So right. I very much think about it. There is no way that I would personally pay £500 to £1,000 a month renting a space to do music. Not at the level that I'm at, for sure, but I can't speak for everybody.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, during lockdown, obviously, I was particularly when it was hot here, I was looking at, I was working at home for this kind of thing, and I was thinking, God, I really wish I'd bought a house that I could have set something up that would allow me to film reviews in it, because then this space is fantastic and it works really well, particularly when we have visitors, and it's a great space, and it's not outrageously expensive for the size that we've got. But now it's almost an impossibility. My house, there's no way I can adapt my house to build a space big enough to film stuff in. But I sort of wish I'd maybe thought about that at the beginning. But I've owned my house for so long that wasn't really a consideration back then. I bought it, perhaps before I'd even started doing much Sonic stuff. So it's a big difference. And I think also depends where you live. I mean, if you're in sort of an urban space, obviously property is a lot more expensive. It's more difficult to come by. If you're in the country or further out of town, or in a place where land is plentiful, say as in America, land is plentiful. I mean, still not cheap, but it means that you're more likely to be able to have a space, right, Rich, to kind of do your thing in.
Exactly. I was going to make a point similar to this. The average size of a family residential space in the U.S. is a bit more square footage than what I've observed in the U.K., for example. Just on average,
for sure.
Not the biggest and not the smallest, but just the average family house, which is, first of all, most often freestanding in this country, is some kind of often row house or duplex in the UK, where the square footage is somewhere just north of half of what we have here. So given those kinds of circumstances, a garden-based studio makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. First of all, your proximity to everything else that's happening in the house is so much closer that anything you're doing in that space is going to affect everybody in the house. So if you have a family, if you have children, if you have a wife, if anybody else is in the building, they're going to be affected by your work if you don't take it outside the building. Here, I have what was once a really sizable upstairs bedroom that is just sort of my man cave / studio. And for the purposes of what I need to do, which is generally work alone with some half decent monitoring and music creation tools, this works fine. For recording a band, it's not fine. And I would go out and do that kind of work elsewhere. And so I've made a decision in my life that for 90% of what I do, I can do it in this space just fine. But for the other 10 or 15%, I'm going to go elsewhere. And I've got places selected where I can go that I can get those things done when and if I need to get them done. So it's a practical question, and it has to do with a lot of things, your personal life situation, the size of the place you live, all of that. But I totally support what Matt's doing, which is building a studio out in his back garden so he can have a separate space from everybody and just be creative in there. It's nice to have a place to go.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, I've just been doing a little bit of mixing outside work, and there's a chap who lives around the corner from me, it turns out. And I didn't know. I mean, literally 30 seconds walk from my house. He's got a flat. He's got a tiny little room, which he's treated, and he's got a pair of ATC SEM something or others in there. I don't know which ones they are. And honestly, we did a mix yesterday, and I was just like, this sounds so good. I mean, I can, in a place like that, I can mix because I could just hear everything I needed to hear. And it was just a tiny little room with some baffles and whatnot, cramped, not particularly large, but it just sounded, it was a really pleasurable experience because I wasn't struggling to hear. I mean, this space is fabulous, but it's not treated and it's nowhere. I wouldn't mix in it. I mean, I've had to mix in it, but I wouldn't be able to mix in it very well because when I realised, I listened to a couple of my rough mixes of what I did yesterday in this new space, and it was like, crikey, that sounds terrible. I don't know how I even, so it's worth, if you're going to be mixing, it's really the difference between, a nice space and a nice set of speakers. I mean, these speakers are about maybe $7,000 a pair, but that sort of level of monitoring, when you've got that at your disposal, it's night and day. It really is. And it really brought that home to me yesterday. I mean, I've got a nice pair of Genelecs here. I've got some Focals, but these ATCs in this space, it was just like, I can hear everything that's going on. I've got a full control over this and I can hear all the differences that my things are making. So that's one thing to think about. And, if you're going to be building, but yeah, absolutely. I would, if I was buying another place, I was moving, I would totally do that. Okay, right. There's another question here. So, okay, this is a bit more fun. This is from Bohem via YouTube. What's the oldest piece of technology used in your music making? And I suppose, I think we should discount things like a drum because obviously that's been around for thousands of years. I mean, I think we have to talk maybe music technology here. It's an interesting question, and I'm trying to think what is perhaps my oldest. And I don't know what the criteria for that is. I'm just trying to think. I guess some of these synthesizers I have are old. Some of those are really old. I've got an MS-20. That's pretty old. I guess that's 30, 40 years. So that's probably the oldest thing I own in terms of music tech. I don't know. Matt?
Me. I'm probably the oldest thing. But, if you was to really think about like the technology behind this and what's going on here, this goes back years and years and years and years and years. So even though these are new oscillators and filters and what have you, actually the technology behind them obviously goes back much, much, much further. If you want to look at it like that, the oldest piece of gear, I don't know, VCS3, System 100, they're pretty old. Old tape machine.
You have a System 100?
Do you know, luckily enough, actually, Rich, at the university I was at, University of West London, it used to be called Thames Valley University, we had, in the Ealing film studios there was one studio that no one ever wanted to go in, and it was the studio I always wanted to go in, and it had a VCS3, System 100, it had one of those rack mounts of the DX7s.
TX81Z, yeah.
Yeah,
Wasp in there, had a couple of Kurzweils, and a sister Analog Solutions modular, and I was just in there the whole time. In fact, I ended up working there, and I remember rewiring the whole place to get all the MIDI to CV working, that kind of thing. So I guess that system, old tape machines, old Neve 7080.
preamps. I think it's a good
teeth on.
Yeah.
Old microphones.
A lot of people are saying yes. The oldest thing in there is me, and they agree. That's a good line to have. I know, Rich. Yeah. What about you? You're not really music technology though, so I guess you must have some pretty old mic preamps.
The oldest things I have here are a Mutron phaser from the 1970s, and the Multimoog, which is right over there. But in terms of what I've used, I mean, if we take Matt's conversation one step further, when I was working in the 70s at Cornell University in their electronic music lab, they had modular Moog number 3.
Right. That's pretty old.
And in 1972, my first synthesizer experience was with an EML 101. So that's as far back as I go with this stuff in terms of hands-on. My interest in it began before that, but my interest in it began with Switched on Bach upon its release.
Yeah.
And then
Interesting.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer probably was the next thing that, and early Yes was probably the next things that pushed my synthesizer interest forward. So
I've got an update.
But I have a working Mutron phaser in the basement, and
that's kind of.
And I have a Steinway 6-foot Model O in my dining room.
That's got to be.
So that's
we've got an 18 something Baxter. Wow. Okay. We've got
Steinway. I have.
My partner's got a Beckstein upright, which is 1800 and something, and I've got a Burns split sonic guitar, which is 1963. Yeah. So that's probably the oldest thing I personally own. That's nice. Good question. Thanks very much for that. Right, gosh, there's more. I'm just trying to find another one. Did I actually put this? Oh yeah, here we go. There's another one from Nick Howes. Very prolific, Nick. Nick Howes via YouTube. With the M1, M2 processors now being so ridiculously fast and capable of running a Motorola what does that say? An M563XX emulator easily, will cloning synths become more of a thing rather than emulating? That's the sort of thing that Nick would know, because he's been in R&D. He worked at Yamaha R&D for a long time. But that idea, I mean, I suppose I'll jump in with that to begin with, just purely because, we see these steps in kind of modeling technology, which I think, if I understand, or are you talking cloning? So cloning the DSP that would have been in, a Yamaha DX7 or something. So you're just basically doing a component model version of that in software. I suppose that's if that's what you're thinking. I'm not sure if that's right, but we see steps, don't we? Okay.
That's how I'm interpreting it. Yeah, if they're talking about DSP, sorry, I know you was going to say something then, Rich. Talk about DSP really within a computer, and then you've got to think about what's the difference between emulation and a clone as well. A clone essentially is like for like, whereas an emulation is this kind of looks and sounds like it, but it's not quite there. The answer is yes. I mean, that's all perfectly possible. If things are getting more powerful, they can clone, emulate the whole shebang. The first thing that I remember that kind of stuck out to me that did this was F-Expansion, when they brought out Strobe and Cypher. And I remember watching their video about how they coded that, and they did point-to-point circuitry measurements before filters, after filters, at the VCA, after the VCA, not just input to output, but all the discrete components, and essentially cloned the DSP there. So I remember that, and I think they sound amazing, to be honest. But to answer your question, I mean, if it's getting more powerful, I mean, crikey, I mean, look at all this AI art we're starting to see coming at the visual art. I mean,
I lost some time there. God, I lost a lot of time there. I'm thinking, Nick's been a bit clearer about this. I think what he was talking about is the fact that they used to run on these processors, so it's literally just taking the code that used to run some of these digital era synths and running them in emulation in their entirety. I guess you've obviously not got the UI and you've not got the A to Ds and D to S. I don't see any problem why that wouldn't happen. I mean, we're already seeing, you see console emulations on Raspberry Pis and whatnot. So nowadays, I suppose some of those high, like Access Virus, which uses the higher end Motorola's, and some things which maybe use Sharks. Now on these chips, we can actually emulate those fixed DSP ideas, those fixed DSPs in their entirety in a clone. I think that's what he means. So yes, absolutely. Di Stanton has given a super chat for a deposit on my new house, where I'll be able to have my Maybe we'll put that towards your shed, Matt, as well. We could split it.
And moving costs.
That moving costs, all of that sort of stuff. Okay, I mean, there are. We've got time for more questions. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming. So let me see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find another one. John Van Eaton. Let's have this one. Just out of curiosity. So John Van Eaton asks, Hiltonius, what OS are you on, Rich, or what OS is everybody on? I mean, I suppose that that's and that's an interesting thing because there are lots of different variants. Depends where you are in terms of hardware. I could go first with that just purely because I was working with somebody yesterday who was working on Hackintosh. That's what they run. They haven't gone to M1, and the last stable is Mojave. So they run Mojave. That's their sort of end point. That's as far as they would go with that. So that's quite far back, but it's still adequate. I know the question was geared to you, Rich. So I don't know what your answer is. I suspect multiple different OSs, right?
Yes, the i9 iMac 27-inch I'm looking at right now from 2019 is running Monterey. The MacBook Air that I've sort of semi-decommissioned over there, the Hyatt from 2012, is running Catalina because that's the last one it will run. And the spanking new M2 MacBook Air next to me over here is running a beta version of OS Ventura.
Right.
So as you can see, I have no fear of these things whatsoever. Zero.
No wonder you can't get Absinthe to load up anymore.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, no, that's been true for a long time. Yes. That's funny though.
Matt,
that's really funny.
What about you, Matt?
I've got the one Mac. This is my one and only Mac, and it's Monterey. Do you know what annoys me a little bit? Not annoys me, but confuses me. Maybe it's partly my dyslexia, but associating a name with an OS and a version number. It's like when someone says, "Oh yeah, I'm on OS 12." It's like, well, which one's that? Is that Catalina or Monterey? Or if someone says I'm on Catalina, it's like, well, what version is that? I find it very difficult to remember the version along with the name.
No idea.
And that's just a little sort of like, I don't know.
Well,
but
modern operating
is don't upgrade too soon. Certainly not in when things are in beta. Personally,
yeah, that's very true.
No fear.
Well, one thing to bear in mind here is obviously if you're on the latest M1 Mac, then that's only going to run the latest version. And most of these auto-update, and in fact, there is actually a really nasty zero-day that affects iOS and Mac stuff that you should really update your iOS devices and your OS X devices because it's a kernel-level kind of access thing. It's not good news. You could probably find out more information. But it's the same with Windows. I'm using Windows 10 over there on the PC, and that will automatically update all the time, because it's sort of, once it's connected to the internet, they've kind of built it so they have it. And to begin with, that didn't work so well because they weren't as perhaps thorough as they used to be, or as you might be. You might say, "Oh, I want to wait for a while." But now, what I do is, if I know if it says I want to update the operating system, I take a snapshot of the machine over there before it happens. So if it all breaks, then I can go back to that at least and then defer. But most modern operating systems, it used to not matter, but if you've got anything connected to the internet, you really do have to keep it patched because there's some really clever and malicious people out there who can access your stuff and do bad things. And it's really, that's the thing that we're fighting against. We might want compatibility, but if you still want to use that machine on a network, you've got to be really careful, I would say. But I suppose that answers that question.
If I could count the number of times I've listened to people who have planted flags in technology at some point in their lives, crying the blues to me 10 years later when they can't any longer get any reasonable path to modernity. Whereas what you're doing, which makes perfect sense, which is making I'm running Time Machine, so I've always got working restallable backups of wherever I am. So I'm not worried about that. And that's important. But how often have I had to use it in 25 years? Very, very, very rarely. Very rarely. And my shit works. This M2 laptop so far is running pretty much everything I need to run in music software that I've tried on it. Now, have I tried everything and have I pushed everything and have I run scientific tests to see where it breaks down? No. but it's so far everything I've asked it to do, it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
We're
usually
running
what happens
Ventura,
with,
which nobody's
yeah, but
running.
usually what happens with these modern OSs is they just, particularly on the Mac side, they just say, I'm sorry, I can't run this. You know, this won't work. Rather than it'll work, but it might be a bit shonky and something weird will happen. The one thing I will, the one thing I will flag up about modern OS X, which has been certainly for a little while now, they broke RTP MIDI. Which is the network MIDI protocol. It just does not work properly anymore, and that is a real shame because that was. I still use it here. I used to. I mean, I use it with the PC and I've still got an iPad 1. You know, the original iPad, which was using RTP MIDI, and I just think that's the thing that broke, and they haven't fixed that. And I keep every time I get invited to an AFL briefing, which has since the person I used to deal with has left, has not been very often. You know, I bring it up, and nobody's ever got back to it. It's just such an edge case, but it just doesn't work properly. I mean, Matt, was it me and you that did a remote MIDI thing?
Yeah.
That wouldn't work now on my laptop or on yours.
It's a shame, man. I remember us doing that and trying to figure it all out, and it felt so magic. And for something to go like that, I don't know. Just these things obviously slide down the sort of priority list for companies as to what they're going to keep on and what they're not going to keep on, I guess. Or they just totally broke it and they don't know how to fix it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. Right, one more question if you've all got... Oh, sorry.
They probably don't have anybody who's testing that and keeping them up to date on the fact that it's broken. So they just don't realize it, probably.
It's just me and Nick.
It seems...
We're the only users in them.
I do. We're the only users in the world. I find that hard to believe. Yeah, send some bug reports. Right, we've got one last question here, which is Kraft via YouTube. How do we feel about Roland purchasing Drum Workshop? This was actually a topic that sort of dropped in late. Roland have bought Drum Workshop. Drum Workshop have been for a long time quite a prestige acoustic kit manufacturer. You know, Drum Workshop, you know, when you see high-end drummers, they're often sort of sponsored by Drum Workshop, and now Roland have bought them, which I find really odd. I'm not sure what to make of this because Roland, as far as I know, never made acoustic drums. They've always made electronic drums. They do, however, now make drums with acoustic type shells that are triggers, so they look like real drums, but they've got the. So I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I hope they haven't bought it just so that they can use the the factory to build the shells for the electronic drum kits. It'd be nice to see Drum Workshop, obviously a brand of that prestige, stick around. I mean, Rich, you probably see them touring. You know, I don't know whether I don't know what Sheik's drummer uses. Is it a Yamaha or a Sonar? I don't know what drum kit style he uses.
Ralph Roll is a Yamaha. Yeah, Ralph Roll endorses Yamaha, but that may be part of what motivates Roland's decision to do this, because I found it very interesting. But yet we live in a culture right now where music companies are acquiring each other like seemingly every week and joining up in conglomerates like the Native Instruments Plug-in Alliance iZotope conglomerate. So it's not that surprising. Maybe they want to compete with Yamaha in that area of Yamaha's business. Yamaha obviously has businesses all over the place, including motorcycles and, home,
kitchen worktops,
all kinds of stuff.
Toothbrushes.
But included among that, it's a very successful drum business, which apparently they are now manufacturing out of China, whereas they had previously manufactured them in Japan.
Right.
DW, it makes fantastic drums, as John Van Eaton points out in the chat. And it's a really, really great company. I'm sure it worked out well for them. I guess Roland wants to be in the drum business, and why not? They're in a position probably to be venturing into these areas, and maybe they always want and if it makes V drums less ubiquitous, that's fine with me, because outside of as practice playing surfaces, I'm just not that big a fan.
Yeah, well, they're everywhere, aren't they? I mean, they kind of own the electronic drum space. That's for sure. I don't know. I mean, you probably have electronic drum kits and acoustic drum kits in your place. I mean, it's an art, isn't it? Miking an acoustic drum kit, so you probably have to deal with that, as part of your education side of things, right?
Absolutely, yeah. But again, it's preparing students for hybrid situations where you're using electronic and using acoustic drum kits. You're going to have that, and they respond differently as well So again, getting them used to that. Again, anything that we really do in education where I'm at, certainly where I'm at, it's about preparing them for the real world scenarios. And there's so many different scenarios. So yeah, that's why we have both. But as to regards them buying this, I don't know how I feel about it. It could be a variety of reasons. It could be literally, like you say, Nick, to buy the places to build stuff. And that might be it. It might be because they had all the chips that everyone's trying to get hold of these days, and it comes with it.
They've got all the lugs. They've got all the lugs in the world.
All the lugs, all the skins, and all the best stalls.
It's all down to lugs and stools. Yeah, that's a potential. That's a potential show title there, Rich. I don't know whether I don't think it quite lugs and stools. They have all the lugs and all the stools. But thank you. Vote in the chat. I don't have access to that yet. Yeah, I used to be able to, but now there's so much going on, I need another pair of hands to do that. But thank you for the questions. Keep them coming. Don't forget, if you want to add any more questions, we've still got a list going, and we will ultimately have a show where we probably just clear all of the topics, and then we can start again. But they're all in there. They're all logged. They won't be forgotten. So thank you very much, everybody, for the questions. And if you do want to enter any questions, remember, you just type QQ. And if in between now and then, because what I do is I set up the next show today, so you can leave a comment in the live the next show, which will be set up and ready to be broadcast for next Wednesday. But you can leave a comment in there and it should get picked up. Or if you want to, you can tweet it to @sonicstate with QQ in the tweet, and we should pick that up as well. It's all starting to come together. But it feels like we're probably at the end of our show. I'm sure. Well, if you've got a live stream, Matt, you probably have some prep to do. I don't want to keep you from
the rack. And,
I might have to talk to you about that, because they sent us one. They sent us one for review, and I haven't reviewed it yet. So I might talk to you.
Oh,
I know that.
Yeah.
Seeing as you'll know.
Okay. Yeah, we should maybe talk about that. But I was going to say I've got to tune this, but you don't really, because it's just like one dial. And looking forward to doing something with this. I don't know what's going to come out of it. That's the beauty of doing live streams and that kind of thing. But if you do join me later on, you can ask some questions about it, I guess, in real time. And I've got the rack down here that I'm actually going to use as well. So you'll be able to see me patching it from scratch. So hopefully I'll see you later, about 6:30, 7-ish.
Okay, nice one. Thanks for that. And of course, Rich, lovely to see you. I hope you have some more restful days ahead of you before you've got to pack your bags and head out on the bus again. No? Okay, you're going tomorrow, are you? Oh, right. Okay. Well, I'm sure you've had a restful day, at least one, maybe, right?
I did. A few, actually, in a row. And I'm quite looking forward to playing on Friday, even if it is on the floor of an auto show. No, I have no idea what it is, but it should be fun. I think it is an auto show. It's in Detroit. And I love playing in this band, so I have no complaints.
Yeah. Great stuff. Well, thank you one and all. And once again, big congratulations to Paulie and Rebecca for their boy, Fen, in the world. Welcome to the world, Fen. Anyway, we'll see you all. Oh, we get some baby tunes on the way out. That would be nice.
You've been playing
anyway, lovely.
When you play the theme. Those are the first 2 minutes.
Okay. I think they are. I can't remember what they were now. But thank you very much, everybody. That's it for this week. Yeah, that's right. Perhaps a little bit atmospheric for a baby tune. It might scare them. You never know. Anyway, lovely to see you all, and thank you very much for your continued support, and all of you. And don't forget, if you're on Patreon, you might see your name go past in a bit. That's it for this time. See you next week. Bye.